Okay, so here we go. This is should machines be tool or tool users? And is this published or just a this just looks like a uploaded paper. Interesting. So I don't know if this is published or just a draft. But yeah. Like there's no footnote here. All right. Anyway, it's from 2018, so it's not that old. We'll see. Okie dokie. Intelligence. Here we are, and yeah, feel free to ask questions along the way. And just so you know, Cinesemiotics, I think my notifications are busted, so I don't think like if you throw me a bit, you're gonna get your pop-up video today, which is annoying. But what can you do? Okay, here we go. Intelligence. I'm gonna drop the volume. While there is no universally accepted definition of intelligence, watching that podcast, it struck me how quickly modern AI is progressing. Which podcast is it? I don't presume bits. I know, but you presume videos and alerts. Or at least I take it you do. So. While there is no universally accepted definition of intelligence, it is widely held to involve reasoning and the ability to acquire knowledge and skills and apply them in unfamiliar situations. The great variety of possible skills and their measures in education, for example, suggests the G factor, an ideal of general intelligence across the board. Alright, I already get annoyed with these general intelligence things. There is nothing here in the ability to acquire knowledge and skills that suggests there is a general intelligence. Maybe you have skills in certain areas, or skills in other areas, or education, but the idea that general intelligence is, yeah, see, this is what I mean, Cinesemiotics. I don't think, it says it's down, and it's not coming back at the moment. Oh, okay, a comedy podcast that happened to feature that Google engineer. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, the one that there was a Google engineer, for anyone who doesn't know, that basically said we're screwed because like AI is already super intelligent or getting close to like intelligent. Okay. Yet, however formally defined, concepts of intelligence derive originally from experience with living creatures whose intelligence ultimately is the capacity to survive and breed. Natural general intelligence is a product of a long selective process that excludes any other type of brain. The bulk of a natural brain is dedicated to running a body, but from this informal experience gathered from creatures is derived the modern sense of intelligence as the capacity to solve a range of problems, focusing on specific human concerns. Okay, this is a fair statement, but this is like a very interesting thing. Why is it that you think, or do some people think, that the tests we're giving intelligence now are really the ones that we should be giving? We're giving the tests that like rule out certain kinds of intelligence, but that doesn't mean we're actually getting at what our intelligence is. It just means we're ruling out things we don't think. A lot of these things are like negative. So it's what the problems we choose to test for are the ones we currently think are cool, but these problems seem to change a lot, to tell you the truth. Hey, I'm streaming. Good. Okay. This problem-solving version of intelligence is a greatly constrained understanding tied to human language use, formal reasoning, and modern cultural goals. Yeah, this is what I thought. I agree. In the context of AI, intelligence is implicitly understood in terms of specific skills and knowledge prized in modern society, as in psychometric testing or in maximizing functions. Such a notion is narrow while remaining ill-defined. It is anthropocentric, culture-bound, and even specific to a generation while often pretending to universality. It bears only a distant relation to its biological origins and context. And yet it is supposed to provide the foundations for catchwords such as superintelligence and mind in general, abstractions which continue to lack coherent meaning. There has been much discussed in recent years about the potential and dangers of thinking machines and how they might think differently than human beings or whether they could ever think at all. Viper's Gratitude says, he was in the news because he thought it was alive, just a provocative statement used in the media. I discounted him, but after listening, he just think it passed the Turing test. Where Google and he differ is that they discount his conclusions because they know how it works, where he thinks you can know how the system works and still agree that it passes the test. Yeah, That's fair. If he thinks like you can know how it works and it passes the test because in some sense that is what it is to be intelligent, like then passing the test should be expected. I don't know if you want to, like, this is the Turing test is good. I don't know if it's the end all be all of intelligence tests, or like consciousness tests. But it's clearly a bar that has to be gotten over. So it's like one thing, but like, what do you mean by getting past the Turing test? You're good enough to fool who in what stuff is yeah. But yeah, so that's fair. But the question is, what does it count? The kind of intelligence that they made, especially because they do know how it works. So, I don't know enough about that specific program. I'm not a Google engineer, but I don't think so. In general, I'm very skeptical about these things because I know a lot of the background theories on what, like, sort of how these things are, what people think intelligence is, and the idea that a computer could replicate those things from the side of like what we can do in terms of like computation, and who and what we're able to do is, I don't think the two match up because the theories just aren't there about what intelligence is. By the way, who is Turing to say? I mean, again, this is why I was saying, like, Turing is like he was a guy, early computer scientist that I mean, you could say more than that, but like he was it was a good idea what he had about this. Turing test is, if you've read the paper, and you can download the paper for free. It's available online. Mind, I think it was published in Mind, makes it available. And so basically it's saying, it's a test saying, look, if you can't distinguish if you're talking to a person or talking to a machine, then the communication has to be assumed to be as intelligent as a person. And so you don't have to, of course, take Turing's word for it, but you do have to think about the kind of game that was being played. It's like an information game. Viper says, I mean, if an alien claimed that their biological robot was alive, would other aliens discount them because they know how DNA works? Yeah, but there's a big difference between how DNA works on a very small scale and like if you know how every biological thing in the human body or in the brain was working. And there's even like theoretical questions about how could anyone know how their entire brain was working, because that would actually have a self-membership problem, and it would make your brain infinitely deep. If you knew everything was in your brain, you'd have to have a representation of everything going on in the brain without abstraction. Now, as soon as you introduce any level of abstraction, then it's a question of what are you ignoring. So there's like abstract, like reflexivity, logical reflexivity issues that have to go on with things like that. And so it gets really complicated to say you know what's going on. I don't think you know what's going on, and any possible way of knowing what was going on is some level of abstraction. So, yeah. What was the Turing test name? It's not the Turing test. It's called, oh shoot, I can't remember. But it's easy to Google. It's actually the same with Lambda. They know how it works in theory, but for generations, it's program written by program. Chinese room. It's more sophisticated than the Chinese room. Actually, no. The Chinese room is, well, let's see. Chinese room, for those who don't know, is your brain like a black box, and basically you can have like symbols coming in, and then like just like have something looking up. Okay, these symbols mean this, and they look in a dictionary, and then I should output that when these symbols are in. And so there's nothing intelligent going on in the computer because it's just looking up things in a table that don't actually it doesn't understand it. So this is a little different than the Turing test, because the Turing test says something is at least equally intelligent as me. The Chinese room says it's not intelligent at all because it could just be looking up stuff in the box. Problem is, there's theoretical problems. It would have to be like an infinitely large dictionary in the Chinese room experiment to be able to handle any input whatever. And so there's like weird problems, and like people think of it as like a thought experiment. Well, it could happen this way. It really couldn't though. There's like technical problems. Like it doesn't actually, I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense. Yeah. So I agree with the like programs written by programs. But again, like does that make it intelligent, or does that just make it obscure from our point of view? I don't know. So, but yeah. But there's a thing. How would we know? Well, you don't know, and you just have to go off of like if something got intelligent on how it acts. But at that point, you know, there's a lot of options. And Fernal, how you doing? How you doing? So let's give Ann a shout out. We raid Ann a lot, but I hope this works. Like I said, my alerts are, yeah, it's gonna fail. Oh no, it didn't fail. Yay! So yeah, we raid Ann a lot. Former academic, who is now doing other things online, including streaming on Twitch, and you should hang out. She's very smart and like a lot of fun. So. Yeah, so we're reading this. Should machines be tools, or, yeah, what is it called? Should machines be tools or tool users? Suggested by not Cinesemiacs today. It's by Viper's Gratitudes. Suggested this one. All right. The range of opinions is proportional to the vagueness of the notion of what it means to think. That is, does thinking refer, for example, to waking sensory experience, to memory, imagination, reverie, thinking of you? To focused contemplation or reflection, history of scientific thought, or to logical and formal reasoning. In the AI context, it often glibly means information processing, but even information remains ambiguous and problematic, despite Shannon's formal definition. Shannon was a great Canadian theorist. In any case, formal thought occupies only a tiny fraction of either our conscious life or the brain's activities, which are mostly dedicated to unconscious regulating and maintaining the body's relation to its environment. The brain is, first of all, an organ of survival. Our feelings, emotions, daydreams, pleasures, and displeasures, gut reactions, moment-to-moment sensory awareness, and many of our thoughts are all related to needs. Oh man, those pre-rolls are going to come back. You suck, pre-rolls. I'm sorry. Alright, yeah, all related to the needs of the human body. Most of our daily routine, including sleep, and how you doing, Ann? I didn't say hi, I hope you're doing well. Including sleep, is devoted to caring for it. Rarely are we called upon to think in the sense of deliberate reasoning. Yet AI assumes that an artificial brain like a computer could be based on principles of abstract reasoning. A very parochial definition of intelligence becomes the basis of the theoretically possible mind, abstracted and supposedly liberated from bodily constraints. The disproportionate significance of language and formal reasoning skills for modernity lies in their advantage for dominance over nature, other creatures, and other human groups. This is the main reason for the overvaluation of problem-solving skills in AI concepts of intelligence, and also for the failure of top-heavy, I don't know what GoFi approaches, but it's usually the this might be the general intelligence approach to the kind of intelligence manifested by organisms, including the human one. In other words, AI was first modeled on language and reasoning skills, formalized as computation in order to extend and generalize those skills. Ironically, the success of this venture was then measured against the broader capabilities of the human organism and found wanting. The dream then shifted from creating specific tools to create artificial tool users that imitate or replicate the organism. Yeah. So, I mean, this is fair, but I'm not sure where the author is going with this, to tell you the truth. Because it's like, all right, they start off with like, okay, we've got all this stuff, and then like, but is it really that smart? I don't know. It's just got this narrow definition. Granted, we like what it's doing when it's reasoning formally, but is that really the goal of intelligence, or what underlies our intelligence? Is that formal reasoning? Okay, 2, machine. In an abstract sense, a machine is a formal deductive system consisting like a game of well-defined elements, rules, and possible operations. In a tangible sense, a machine is a physically realized version of that abstraction. Above all, both the abstraction and its realization is an artifact, a product of definition. I mean, you can define anything you damn well please. And anything we do in terms of human stuff is going to be a technological artifact. That's the definition of artifact. It's like anything humans make. Viper says, for perspective, the Fukushima disaster happened in 2011. The toxic environment necessitated sending robots in, but the robots couldn't navigate the rough terrain. This led to DARPA Robots Challenge in 2012. If you recall that footage, in that footage, robots were awful, falling over constantly. It did, however, coincide with a fresh approach to AI, recursive neural networks. Today, they can dance and do backflips. Yeah, that Boston Dynamics stuff is really cool. If anyone hasn't seen the Boston Dynamics, you can Google Boston Dynamics and see some crazy robot dances. They can dance and do backflips, while natural language processing bots can pass the Turing test. All this in 1 decade. Well, yes. Once we start doing stuff, we get very impressed with ourselves. But yeah, we are making some really good progress in this area. Again, I think the idea that we're making progress again is kind of narrow, because these are the problems that like all of a sudden we are working on. And like once we start working on like solving those problems, it looks really impressive. But the underlying philosophy and the underlying concepts, I don't know if they're really any different from like the last 50 years. We haven't really changed our idea of what intelligence is, maybe significantly since the Industrial Revolution. Hey, Juggling Biohazards, what's up? How you doing? Juggling Biohazard says, with how our technology is going, it seems inevitable at some point we'll have some level of biomechanical enhancement, making us closer to machines, while machines are closer to organisms. So the conversation of ethics gets shifted back to us in some form. Oh, absolutely. My brother used to work on, he worked for a company that made hearing aids. And so, like, the implanted hearing aids. And so if you get a modern hearing aid, like an implanted one, they come with phone apps. And so you are literally a cyborg at that point. You have a computer interface that is affecting the hearing organs in your brain, in your head, and it's controllable via your phone. You can't dance or do backflips. You barely pass the Turing test. Well, I mean, there is Twitch chat test. Does Twitch chat? Do you get banned in Twitch chats versus not? And that would be worth something. Do you pass the Twitch troll test? And we could argue about that. But yeah, so the question, like my brother said that for one of their advanced models, they had some test volunteers or whatever. But I mean, the idea that they're test volunteers, nothing bad's gonna happen. They're getting the fanciest possible tech. So they said they had one teenage girl, and she said, like, they were talking to her about her uses. She said when her mom starts yelling at her, she just mutes her mom. She can, like, literally on her phone, like, just mute her mom out. So it's like, that's the sort of shit that's happening. And I was like, okay, are we gonna now, when we start doing this, start getting ads? Like, could you deliver ads directly into that person's head? And he was like, yeah, that would be terrible, but like, it's technically possible through the app to like play, whatever they want. So like, but yeah, you could deliver ads directly to people's heads that have these systems in them. Viper says, the working ideas are one factor, but computational power is a factor too. The century biology was revolutionized because the computational power at hand turned into a digital discipline. Yeah, that's fair. We can do a lot more stuff with high-powered computers than we used to. But again, the theories aren't any different. It's just the computational power. Now, does boosting the power change anything? And that's actually very hard to answer. We don't know. Juggling Biohazard says, oh, you think there was a Black Mirror episode to mute people. That's cool that your brother does that. Amazing how tech to enable people is available when it wasn't not that long ago. Yeah. This stuff is fascinating. He doesn't work for the hearing aid company anymore. He's with a different company, but it's still in medical. He's a biomedical engineer. That's what he does. Vapo says philosophy and AI is pretty fun. I like the framing history of the field here. And I tried to get you to read something from John Simons before. I think he's in the University of Kentucky Vipers, but you could look him up because he is Irish. I checked on that. But I mean, like, he's American Irish, I think. But he does a lot of philosophy and computers. He's a philosopher of computation, and so he's arguing about what sort of things you can do with more computation, what is computationally possible. Yeah. So like this is why I was like we should read something by him, because I was like he's a virus extraction, and he's probably interested in what he probably talks about things you want to talk about. So, but yeah. So, okay. Have anything else to say? All right, I'll continue, but keep asking questions. Is all good. Yeah, so anything we make is by definition an artifact, and it like a product of definition. I don't know what they mean by definition here, but anything humans make is an artifact. That's all it is, definition-wise. This is what renders it a deterministic system. Conversely, the only true deterministic systems are artifacts, whether physical or conceptual. All right, I don't know what the fuck they're talking about right here. We can make non-deterministic systems. We just have to build in randomization. But like you can build in randomization to begin with. That's how like science progresses. You have to build in the randomization to begin with. Otherwise, you're just, you know, building a deterministic system, and it's completely dependent on initial conditions. People don't realize that. If you have to build in randomness, otherwise you're just reading your initial conditions back after your system runs. Viper says, copy pastaing. What impact on the world of philosophy do you think it will have if humanity did create an unambiguously sapient, sentient artificial life? Not much, really. Of course, there'll be people who are angry about this, like the religious folks or the people who think they're special by being sentient. Philosophy on its own doesn't really care who it's dealing with, like the rest of it. Like, unless it's really good at philosophy, I don't think philosophy is going to give much of a fuck. Of course, there'll be ethics on, like, is it ethical to create life? And there'll be, like, you know, a cottage industry around that and dealing with it. But unless it's, like, really good at stuff, and depends what it's really good at. But, like, imagine we make a completely sentient thing, and it's basically like, okay, we have another human now. Like, we just made a human baby, but not in the normal way. We made a new human baby via computer. It really depends on what sort of intelligence sentience it actually is. Is it like an alien intelligence? Is it like another human intelligence? Is it something else? Yeah, so I think it would really, like, because as far as anything I do, I'd say, oh, that's nice. But it'd be kind of like when they cloned the sheep. I was like, oh, good for them. They figured something out. But, like, it really depends what the output is. Because then it would mean, like, what is it to be sentient and stuff like that. But, like, if it's like we made another human, like, okay, that's nice. But, like, actually having another human doesn't really do anything for us. It's like we've got lots of humans. So, yeah, it really depends on the output. You see, you're assuming the kind of intelligence that the sentience is. I don't know that we can make an intelligence that is sentient and then also can progress at an exponential rate. Now, if we're doing like something that can do both of those things, be sentient and keep learning at like some ungodly rate, then yeah, we're probably fucked at that point. But I don't know, I don't even know what it means to learn at that rate, because that's not something we can do. So again, like, that'd be a super interesting thing, because then it'd be like, all right, why would it deal with us? If it's learning at an exponential rate, it'd be like things that would just say, you know, you guys are stupid, we're out, and bye. And then we'd have a problem like, okay, we created something and it just left. So that would be interesting too, but like, it would have to, like, again, be really good at something I care about before it really makes a difference to me. So, like, that's the thing. Like, how does it matter? Like, is it good at philosophy or is it not good at philosophy? If it's good at philosophy, then I care. If it's not, then it's like, okay, we're just dealing with, like, you know, a really smart dog, a smart human, something that an alien life form is basically kind of it. Like, yeah, like, it'd be kind of like running into a very smart alien. Now, the fact that we created it's one thing, but like, if we ran into a really smart alien that kind of thought we were idiots, like, okay, that's fine, but like, that again doesn't really matter to me in some sense. It'd be really cool to know about and learn all we could off of it. But if it just was like, yo, like, nice to meet you, I'm out because like you don't mean anything to me, that's fine too. I mean, chances are it'd kill us just because that's how all of our sci-fi is, but whatever. It's like the like if we found out we were living in a simulation. It's like, what can I do? Yeah, coming to take our jobs. Yeah, like I said, unless they can do philosophy, I don't care. like, and I don't even get paid for this shit. All right. In principle, machines and their abstract counterparts, scientific models, are exactly what we specify them to be. Nature, on the other hand, was not defined by human beings and is presumably not an artifact. Yeah, we didn't make nature. We do not specify its elements or operations about which we can only speculate. This drastically qualifies the mechanistic metaphor that continues to underlie science in general, and the assumption in particular about that organisms are machines. Yeah, I mean, if you have a teleological view of nature, then you think it is kind of like a sort of all working towards one way. If you have a more organic view of nature, where it's all sort of like this mush, then there may not be any sort of anything that goes forward. It just does stuff. So models of the organisms of the brain are artifacts. Yeah. So if you think, well, see, again, this is sort of already treating artifacts as inherently teleological, that they're goal-oriented in some way, and that it makes some sense in sort of a mechanistic model. And that's what they're saying here. A mechanistic model of the organism of the brain are artifacts, and of the artifacts they mean are products of definition, but like I said, you can build different things into your model, things you don't control, and we can do that. Like, we can build things that are out of our control, or we can conceive of things that are out of our control. That's not crazy. Okay. Author says, but the body is only metaphorically a machine, the brain is only metaphorically a computer, and thinking is only metaphorically computation. Yeah, like all these things are abstractions. Logical thought, formalized as computation or information processing, is a high-level human construct that is recycled as the theoretical basis to explain itself, a circularity that bites its own tail. Fair enough, like, I agree. Like, just because the brain says this is, like, part of it, that doesn't mean that, like, this is actually what it is. You have to have, like, better reasons than that. So. Oh, we're getting an embodiment argument. Okay. 3. Embodiment. Natural intelligence is embodied, but is embodiment a condition that can be simulated or artificially implemented? Is it just a matter of hooking up a mind to an arbitrary choice of sensors and effectors? Such an idea is the modern counterpart of the brain in a vat, first introduced by Descartes, who proposed that experience could be deceptively fed to one's consciousness by some other source than one's natural senses. In this thought experiment, Descartes found support for the existence of a mind or self that is independent of a body. If such a freestanding mind can exist, detached from its natural senses and motor capabilities, then surely it could be retrofitted with artificial sensors and effectors, indeed an artificial body. The abstract concept of mind in general that underpins AI is thus disembodied in principle. The desired corollary is that it can be re-embodied in various ways as a matter of consumer choice. Alright, so for those who don't know, the embodied mind is a kind of a... It gained a lot of support in the latter half of the 20th century, and I guess it's continued. But the idea is that our brains are the way our intelligence works is that it's in a body, that basically the concept of, like, you know, what it is to grasp something literally is tied to the idea that we can grasp things with our hands. So, like, the idea that I can manipulate this pencil and, like, grasp it is exactly what we are, in some sense. That metaphor about that thought is really not an abstract, like, logical thought. It has to do with, like, my ability literally to deal with things in the world with my hand. And that's how we really understand stuff, is this in an embodied way that I can deal with things, like, physically in the world, or like we can interact in that way, and that's really what it is to think, not this abstract stuff. So yeah, while an artificial brain might indeed be wired to an artificial body, producing a robot would that be an artificial organism? Would it constitute a mind? A natural brain might indeed be connected to a range of prosthetic devices, but could a natural brain be disembodied as a program to be reconnected to a natural or artificial body? Would that reconstitute a natural person? Yeah, so can you, like, brain swap here? And does that even make sense that you could brain swap with something that is a completely different physical body? Because if our thought is tied to things like being able to grasp things like hands do, then if you swap into something that does not have hands, then can you still think? So, I mean, would that reconstitute a natural person? The tits of Theseus. That's lovely, Vipers. Yeah, so I mean, if you are, well, this is one of the funny things. And this is, I don't know anything about this myself. I haven't experienced this thing, but you can imagine someone freaking out about having like different parts of their body like grow differently. So imagine like, you know, you all of a sudden you have tits where you didn't before, and you're freaking out over your body, and you get like dysphoria and stuff. So this is where I assume, and like I said, I don't know, and I apologize if I'm getting anything wrong. This is part of where like dysphoria could like where people don't feel like they exist rightly in their own body. Like, this is part of that stuff. So, like, could you, like, replace all the different parts of your body? I don't know. Juggling says, also another Black Mirror episode. A mother was going to die, so she transferred her consciousness to a teddy bear, but couldn't move as the bear only experienced things. Yeah, that's freaky. Because then it's a locked-in, like, horror sort of thing. Yeah. But I mean, that's also a Chucky thing where you're in a doll. That's a old trope where you get, like, a consciousness into a doll. So yeah, would that constitute a natural person? The author says the short answer to such a question is no. A robot is not an organism and is not embodied. Conversely, no natural mind can be disembodied. Alright, so they're just laying it out. They will like this embodied thought, the embodied theory of mind. For embodiment is not simply physical instantiation of a freestanding abstract system, but a history of relations with an environment including other creatures that develops through natural selection. Okay, so they're even going further. It's not just being part of a body and that's how you physically do it. You have to be sort of this historical development, and like it's tied, like our minds are tied to how our bodies are through the like history of natural selection. So that's why we can grasp things, because the mind co-evolved with the body. Minds, like the brains that support them, are organs of bodies, and a body is not simply a physical system, but an autopoietic system that is the product of an evolutionary process involving a whole ecology. Yeah, and they're not even okay. So not even is it the history of the body and mind together. It's the whole ecology that gave rise to it. So this is like, not only is it that, it's the whole like history including the earth. That's a bigger claim. Okay. While an organism is part of an ecology, its relative autonomy as a unit means that it is self-regulating, self-maintaining, self-reproducing, and self-defining. Cinesemiotic says, you hear about that guy who got a penis transplant after an accident, and then after a few months his body accepted, but his mind did not. He had to have it removed because it felt like it was someone else's peen. I did not hear about that. That's amazing. And the idea that he'd have to get his dick cut off twice is just like, that's like a horrifying and amazing story. Around here, what was it? There was, yeah. Well, that's the dysphoria, I believe. Like, it's really bad for people who get it bad, apparently. Like I said, I don't know, and I apologize if I get anything wrong. But, like, thinking your body is, like, alien is, like, it's terrible. And, so, it's like, you can understand when you lose a body part, but then thinking your actual body is alien is, like, scarier. What's it called? It was in a peer. Okay, well, it's like a, yeah. I mean, that's a fascinating story. I'm sure, like, and it's good that it was scientists got to him and, like, you know, psychologists, so they can figure out about these things. But this is where a lot of this embodied mind stuff comes from. These kinds of things. So like psychologists in the 50s. There was a guy called a philosopher, psychologist called Merleau-Ponty, French guy, and he talked about these sorts of things. And there's a bunch of other people. So these are the sorts of problems where these things go wrong, and that's how the embodied mind sort of gained support, because it showed that the mind really needs the physical body. Okay. And there's also, what was it, John Wayne Bobbitt? There was a guy around here, and his wife cut his dick off and threw it out the window, and like someone found it. And so that was one of the stories I heard when growing up, was about John Wayne, I think it's John Wayne Bobbitt, and his wife cutting off his dick with like scissors. She like tossed out the window. Viper says, does the existence of transgender people call into question where the norm resides, if not in the status quo? Yeah, there's a big range on like what we can do, like in terms of mind, body, and stuff relations. I mean, the status quo is sort of, yeah, I mean, the idea that there is any sort of norm for this, I don't know where it is, but like, it's the fact that like, okay, here's a better answer, I think. Transgender people are just actually pretty much normal people. They are the same result of the like history of evolution. Now, of course, some of them have more problems than others. I know that. Some non-transgender people have lots and lots of problems. But like the idea that there's any status quo, they're at the end of evolution, just like everyone else in the that's alive right now. And so they are the status quo. This is the status quo of humanity. All of us are here right now together. And so, like, they are the norm. Like, that is the norm as far as evolution is concerned. Now, if you want to use some other standards, go ahead. But you have to, like, then define what those standards are. Viper says, I mean, with regard to sense of self and sense of body. Oh, yeah, like, in that case, definitely, if we're not talking in terms of evolution, then, yeah, like, people have to... I think this is why there's, like, so many, like, they get a lot of problems, is basically because the gender norms in society are kind of out of whack, and so that affects them, of course. If you're not, like, you don't fall into the easy categories, but yeah, so I think it definitely does push on societal norms. Cinesemiotic says the moral of the story was that interventional penile transplants for medical emergencies may not be a good idea, even though biologically they can work well enough. Yeah, I mean, in some sense, I would like it on record that if I lose mine and they can put it back, I will take it. Yeah, I will risk the dysphoria. Maybe not, I don't know. I'd have to look at the research to see if it really is a bad idea, but like it seems like, you know, why not? Juggling Biohazard says, that's also why experiencing ego death while doing DMT is so terrifying as you dissociate from your physical body. Yeah, I mean, you can learn a lot of stuff by doing drugs like that, or not, but like you can, and that's why people freak the fuck out, and you should definitely be doing it in a safe way if you do that stuff. Yeah, if Cinesemic says, because if you just have to cut off again, that's even worse. So yeah, so absolutely. Also beware of driving an ought from an is. Yeah. I mean, if I said anything there that was like, yeah, it's, there's nothing you ought to do, like, just because somebody, like, just because you can have these problems, yeah. No, you get a transplant, someone else's now. Hey, why should we have a good Peter go to waste? Yeah. But see, that's the whole thing. Like, people, like, these are the fundamental things. I mean, you could just get yours tattooed, like, dark color if you just want to be a dark color, Vipers. Yeah. So, all right. I can't think anymore. Let's continue a little bit here. So, life, I guess, it can adapt by changing itself even on a microscopic level. Its primary output is itself. On the other hand, robots, machines, and tools in general are allopoietic systems designed by human intention to produce something besides themselves that is of use to their creators. Yeah, but we could say what is of use to our creator, this time being something that does the same thing that we do. So why can't we just say we're going to make something that is self-replicating? Phalloplasty roulette, yeah. It's like, all right. They are products of human definition and exist through intervention external to the system. Embodiment is not a physical state that can be artificially duplicated, independent of time and or context. Rather, it is the result of an historical and ongoing relational process that may be impossible to duplicate. All right, I find this a very strong claim right here. Why can't we make an embodied system? You develop a robot that has to, has a body inherently from the get-go, and you create it with the notion that it has a body from the get-go. Granted, we'll have to do some work to replicate the the history of the embodiment, but that doesn't mean we can't from the get-go have these ideas, assuming we understand the ideas well enough, have this at the forefront of our making it, and therefore we can make an embodied robot. And we'll have to get better at it, but why can't we start off with the concept of embodiment to begin with, and then knock out all the stupid ideas that don't work? That doesn't seem like it's that impossible, but the author is claiming it may be. I mean, why? All right, can an evolutionary environment be simulated in computers? How many video games? Yeah, okay, let's keep reading. While artificial life software may be developed this way, it does not constitute real life and is not physically embodied. All right, what counts as real in this case? Like, we're getting really good with our video games. Why can't a character in a video game be that physics simulation is pretty fucking close? It gets there. And it's not physically embodied. Of course it's not physically embodied, but it is physically embodied in that world where there is that physics engine working. So it is physics engine embodied. And so you can make stuff in a world with a physics engine that is not as good as real life physics, of course, but to tell you the truth, for anything that you or I are doing, none of us are moving at the speed of light, or doing anything all that unusual. A video game physics engine is gonna be 80 to 90% most of what we ever do, like walking around, running, shooting a gun, even the high-end physics engines. We would be okay being inside of them most of the time, not all of the time, but I bet most of it. So this just seems like it's not this paper here. I'm a little critical of the author at this point. What counts as real life, especially if you're talking about a sort of simple organism you're just trying to make, maybe not the fanciest artificial intelligence, but that intelligence, if you put it in a very high-end computer simulation, it would take it a while to find a disconnect between their world and ours. Technically, we are moving at the speed of light, not through space, but through space-time. Sure, but that's okay. That's just part of physics. That's how we move. That is what we do. That is just physics. But I mean, we can't increase our relative speed to the speed of light. So, but fair. Okay. The idea might be evolved to evolve simulated mind in an artificial environment and then connect it to an interface with the real world. Yeah, I mean, if you're in a simulated environment that is real enough and then you connect it to the real world, maybe. The supposed advantage is that such programs can develop much faster since they do not depend on successive generations that take significant real time, as in natural evolution where genetic software depends on generations of wetware. But this begs the question of whether the software of an artificial mind can develop in such a disembodied state. In other words, is the evolution of a simulation really a simulation of natural evolution? Considerations to follow suggest that the answer is no. And I already disagreed here. What do you mean? Why is this not evolution in the computer system? Granted, it's not full our reality evolution, but we know what evolution is well enough, and you can simulate a environment in a computer well enough. So can you make something embodied on those given those things? The answer, according to the embodied definition that they give here, would be yes. Now, is it 100% our world? No, but that's dumb. We're still getting very close at this point. Juggling says, that brings up an uncomfortable idea of how it's alright to play Game Theft Auto now because the characters in it aren't real, but what if they're sentient? Baseball bat sure is fun. Yeah, and there are a huge number of, go talk to our friend Aristotle if you want to talk about computer ethics, because, I don't really, of course, you can go have some fun things in a video game that don't exist in the real world, but again, if you're starting to worry about, that these things are sentient and have real feelings, then it's gonna get, uncomfortable real quick for both them and you. So, simulation. Formalization is the funnel through which one thing can be considered analogous to another, or even identical. A rose is a rose is a rose. Hey Lumpy, what's up? How you doing today? A rose is a rose is a rose has the truth of a tautology, but there are many varieties of rose and each actual flower is different. An airplane flies, but not as a bird does. A model airplane may actually fly like a real one because it is a real aircraft, although a model of an airplane may actually fly like a real aircraft because it is a real aircraft, although reduced in scale. There's a cool video out there. Some people made a model bird that actually flaps. You can look it up. Like, they gave a TED talk and it flew around the room, and it was like really cool to watch. That is, one artifact can readily simulate another when they instantiate the same design, since they are both products of a common definition. To simulate a natural object or process is another matter. Creationism notwithstanding, there is little reason to believe that natural objects are designed, but even if they were, we have no inside knowledge of that design, about which we can only speculate. That is dumb. The idea that we can't figure out how something is made, like, maybe not us so much, but like, you could go figure out like something a bit more simple in the world, like, well, we don't have a whole lot of things, but you could you could make a physics simulation of water. We do this all the time in video games. You don't even need it to be like a high-end video game, but you have water simulations. We did not create water. That is part of nature. You can simulate water. We do it every freaking day. It's not even difficult. Yeah, immersion is good. Yeah, Robot Bird. Oh, thank you, Vipers, for finding that. But like, so this is dumb. Again, so like the idea that we need the design, but we can't figure it out. Sometimes we can. We figure out water simulations. We know exactly how to simulate water nowadays. Not exactly, but our water simulations look really cool if you look at all the new video games or movies and stuff where they do that. Okay. Author says, in fact, this is true not only in regard to simulating organisms, but as a general principle regarding the limits of scientific knowledge. The Bohr model of an atom is a simulation of the real atom, about which the empirical evidence is merely statistical. Okay, so they're saying something different. They're saying we can't get the entire world outside of abstraction. Fair, but we can model it. But that means we have never figured out anything. This person is just a fictionalist about reality. That is okay, but like, they should be clear that they're just a fictionalist about all of reality, that all of the things we say are like useful fictions. That is a position, and it's a, I think it's well respected still, but this person's a fictionalist, and like the idea that we can't know anything about the actual world is that's pushing it. Like, you can be that way, but like, we have learned some things about the world, I think. Okay, any scientific mathematical model is an idealization and a product of human definition, whereas the real phenomena it describes is not a product of human definition and corresponds only approximately to the model. The model is an artifact in its own right, which might perfectly correspond to some other artifact and serve as a blueprint for its production, but no model of a natural reality can ever be proven complete or perfect, or else there would be an end to science. It is therefore fundamentally unreasonable to assume that a brain, for example, can be perfectly simulated. A key question, however, alright, I agree that we're not, under our current understanding, we can't simulate a brain, but like, this is a very, these arguments are coming, I think this is just a little sloppy here. A key question, however, is whether it could be mimicked well enough to result in an artifact that demonstrates a conscious mind, perhaps even with the same personality and memories as the real individual it copies. Fantasies of uploading and downloading human minds depend on this dubious assumption. Again, human mind might be special, like, because it's what we use, and so the idea that what we can figure out what we use is very hard, but anything else is closer. However, of course, there's a Humean sort of, actually, it's not even fair to say this is a Humean position. Hume did think we were getting somewhere in science, although we couldn't always figure out causation. He thought like we could figure out we could only correlate, not find causes, and so we couldn't actually know what was happening in the world. But it's very, very sort of. I find this a little, yeah. So this is what exactly. It's not I find it's just a little messy here. Like, what exactly is the argument that you can never ever proven perfect or complete? Yeah, you can't prove that what we do is exactly how the world is. But does that mean all of our simulations are just wrong? I mean, what do you mean by perfect, like proven here? Like, again, this is a mathematical thing. Yeah, you don't prove anything in science. That's not what you do. So that's not in some sense the right standard. Now, So what do you mean perfectly simulated here? It's like, well, yeah, we don't know how that works, but does that mean nothing can be simulated? I don't know. Of course, there's it's from Borges, I think. No, it's not. Is it from Borges or somebody else? Well, Borges, I think, has a nice rendition of this. Yes, technically true, but is it interesting? And I don't think it's interesting here. There's a story. It's called The Map of the World. So many years ago, some like map maker said, "Look, we're gonna we have to figure out what's in our kingdom here. We have to make a map." And like the king goes, "Okay, we're gonna make. That sounds like a great idea." And the king gives them money, and they go set about making a map. But they realize that they're missing things off their map, so they get more and more detailed in their map, and they realized that they didn't have enough space on their little map, so they made the map bigger and bigger. Oh, it's Baudrillard? Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you, Semiotics. Until they eventually had to cover the entire reality with their map to get like all the things on reality on the map. And of course, it became useless. No one wants a map of reality that just is reality. It makes no sense. And so, of course, you can't get something that exactly lines up, because that just means you have the thing to begin with. Does that mean we get nowhere? Again, this person's a fictionalist. They should just say that. They shouldn't make these arguments that are kind of a little shaky here. Viper says, the lowest energy state of the universe simulation is a universe. So any simulation that exists with the universe is compromised. Yeah, basically. The universe is the universe is the universe. But like if this person just wants to go like full on fictionalism that like we can't do anything and we can't know that anything we do is that way, that's fine. But again, then what do you mean by any of the words you were saying that's coming out of your mouth? They're just useful fictions, okay. But like, it puts this person in a sort of a tight spot, because of what are we doing in science? So yeah, it's like then we get nothing right ever. And it's like that doesn't seem right either. Okay. Mind. The functionalist view of mind is that it resides in organization and structure rather than in particular materials. This presumes that, okay, and this is also a panpsychist sort of thing. It's like it could be any sort of organization structure, not in any particular object of materials. This presumes that this organization and structure can be correctly, if not exhaustively, identified. This in turn has lent credence to some AI projects on the assumption that such organization and structure can be duplicated in a non-organic infrastructure. But this is precisely the assumption questioned above. We are dealing always with our own analysis of structure and organization, models, and never with reality itself. What results will be an artifact, not a clone or duplicate of the original. Yeah, but that's not their point, just so you know, author. The idea that it's structure and organization assumes that, we're getting something right, but that's an assumption. They don't care about, the point is that why would you need to actually make, brains out of the particular physics that, like, or the particular biology? Couldn't you just have, like, swap out, like, one sort of, one chemical for another one that does something very similar? Why can't you swap out one atom for something that does something similar? Like, you could have a whole different like biochemistry, or even a physical chemistry. It could just be like 10 times bigger and it would still work. It has to do with the organization structure, not the particular size and shape of our own brains. Stop giving Lumpy ideas. Lumpy, if you can do it, I want to know how. Go for it. Okay, the concept of mind in general, as it has developed in AI, is not a generalization of the actual instances of mind with which we are familiar, that is, organisms on the planet Earth. Rather, it selects isolated features of human performance as the basis for a theoretical system designed from scratch, an artifact. But designed with what purpose in view? This very selectivity suggests a concrete tool, rather than mind as tool user with its own purposes. Yeah, I mean, and that's a great question. Like, who needs reality anyway? Whose reality? What reality? And it's like, this person is very focused on, like, that you can't replicate reality, but they haven't gone and done the hard metaphysical work of telling us exactly what reality is, except that we can't replicate it. And that's weird when you don't know what you're talking about. This is a hand waving at the meaning of reality, and they haven't defined reality in this paper. They haven't talked about it at all, except in saying that we haven't got it with our tools. So, mind is a notion at least as nebulous as intelligence, and I'd add reality to that, but the author isn't doing that right here. So mind is a notion at least as nebulous as intelligence. For one thing, it can refer either to the objective behavior produced by a system or to the subjective experience we know in human consciousness. This ambiguity leads in two contrary directions: sophisticated computational tools that behave as we intend versus artificial persons as unpredictable as their natural counterparts. We know that mind, in either sense, as behavior or as experience, is manifested by human brains. So the project to artificially produce a mind by emulating the brain and perhaps enhancing from there may seem more feasible than building a mind through sheer programming. Yet for reasons mentioned, it remains questionable whether it is possible to emulate a real brain well enough and in sufficient detail to recreate all its functioning. Furthermore, we ought to question the end as well as the means. Apart from creating a powerful tool with broad capabilities, why should we want to recreate consciousness? Well, I mean, that's a completely different question. Lumpy says, I spent the day collecting ideas around the progress we did on a complex drug development to present them so we can decide how to move forward. I brained too much. No more brain. That is perfectly fair. No more brain. No more lumpy brain. Just smooth brain. I mean, why should we want to have kids? This is the anti-natalist thing. Like, that's the thing. Like, should we have kids? Why would we want to make more consciousness? Like, is that a good idea? But, like, again, this is beyond all these things. Like, I'm not even sure why this relates to it. Like, what's the desire to create consciousness? That's a different question than what they were talking about here. So, like, it's a little strange. I find this to be a non sequitur, given all their other arguments. But, sure. It's like, I don't know where they're going. I hope you, made some progress on your drug development though, Lumpy. Usually, like, when I work really hard, sometimes I'm like, don't think I got anywhere, but you know, you give it 2 days and then your brain can process. You want to create consciousness because I don't have a vagina. You're Sarah Connorist. You also spent 2 hours playing Stardew with your girlfriend, and she said, "On your ray of sunshine in your life." Well, that is sweet, and I'm happy that you feel happy. Yeah. Well, I mean, I also get the sense that there are some very lonely people out there, and they are trying to. What is it? It's Prometheus. It's what is it? My Fair Lady. This is a very old story where a sculpture is trying to make their ideal person, and they fall in love with it. This is not even like new. Like, this is nothing new. This is ancient fucking desires where there's somebody that, like, for whatever reason, you know, they can't find what they want in this world. They can't get what they want in the world, and so they try to create it. And I'm sure there's some of that going on. And if you don't think people are trying to make like robot sex bots, then you're also wrong. Anne's a hamster in a wheel who thinks she knows what reality is. Yeah, well, maybe you are. Maybe your wheel is reality. Love potion number 9, nice. Yeah. What is it? Despite all my rage, I'm still just a rat in a cage. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're making progress. Narcissus, thank you. See, I don't know anything. Narcissus. Yeah. Thank you, Cinesemiotics. I appreciate you. Okay, consciousness. Like mind, consciousness is an ambiguous term with several meanings. All right, I just want to say this is getting, like, this is an interesting paper, but, like, some of this, the rhetoric here is, like, not to my liking. Like, they're, you know, saying, hey, look, there's things that are ambiguous and vague. It's like, no shit, they're ambiguous and vague. We know they're ambiguous and vague. It's not helping this person's argument right here. Like, this section right here, where they were like, oh, it's like mind in general is vague. It's like mind as a notion is nebulous as intelligence. Yeah, thank you. I know that. Like, we don't have good definitions of these things. That's what everyone's trying to do. Like, they're trying to come up with a better one. And same here, like mind, consciousness is an ambiguous term with several meanings. No shit, Sherlock. So I'm a little annoyed with the rhetoric at this point in this paper. In particular, it can refer to a faculty or behavior of cognition, as in consciousness raising, or it can mean phenomenal experience, as in conscious of time passing. These are two aspects of the same thing, according to whether the point of view is that of the subject in question, first person, or of another subject as observer, third person. The faculty we can call consciousness is a specialized function of the brain which otherwise operates non-consciously. The experience of being conscious is what it is like to be specialized faculty in operation, rather than to observe it from the outside. Yes, so that's the point. Consciousness looms disproportionately large in the life of human beings who identify almost exclusively with their conscious experience. I don't know, this might be a Western philosophy thing, but I'm not sure that everyone talks about this as much in other philosophies. Okay, however, ever since Freud, it has been recognized that consciousness is merely the tip of the mental iceberg. Since most of the brain is dedicated to running the organism without conscious attention, so most of the mind consists of non-conscious operations. It is therefore misleading to identify mind with consciousness, and misguided to base a concept of artificial mind on aspects of intelligence derived from limited aspects of conscious thought. But I mean, this is recapitulating the embodiment from above. Basically, this is what embodiment is that your mind is doing all this other stuff and it's in the body. It's not just thinking in the abstract sense. Consciousness is appropriate and necessary for the kind of system in which it occurs naturally, serving its specific purpose. Again, we don't know this, because again, do we know what consciousness is? No, but this is just a claim. This is not they didn't back this up. They just claim that this is the sort of thing it is. Okay. And they're saying it is not epiphenomenal. How do they know? Where's that claiming coming from? Epiphenomenal is something that arises over and above the phenomenon. So that would be that the mind or consciousness is something that is somehow above the phenomenon of the unconscious thought. So they're saying it is part of the mind. That's fine, but again, they did not argue for this. They're just stating it. Okay. Yet one might propose to create consciousness artificially as a goal in its own right, or for its own sake, as though it were an optional luxury unrelated to serving a body. In natural minds, consciousness registers input in a representational system. Input is interpreted in relation to an internal model. Compared to unmediated reflex, consciousness involves a higher order response that allows for planning and wider behavioral options. It is usually occasioned by situations that demand attention because they cannot be accommodated by habitual non-conscious responses, or because, being a function of distance, there's time for considered response in addition to reflex. I mean, okay, so consciousness is supposedly does other things, and it's not unmediated reflex. Fine. Okay. The experience of pain, for example, often occurs as a secondary response in addition to a primary reflex, as when the hand automatically withdraws from contact with a hot surface. If that reflex does not successfully avoid tissue damage, then we feel pain as an ongoing sensation. The sensation itself, the painfulness, is a valuation based on a prolonged and self-generated signal indicating tissue damage. I don't know about this. You need someone who's more knowledgeable about the biology, that this is what it is. It's a valuation. Now, what kind of valuation is it? I don't know, but it's not an ethical valuation on a prolonged and self-generated signal indicating tissue damage. Now, what do you mean by signal here? This, all of a sudden, we're getting a new term introduced again. And so, this is a problem here, because the author is treating pain as a decided thing. Lumpy says, the papers I saw you read here all have the flavor of, "Gah, I must revolutionize human thought, but I don't know shit," waves hands. "Here's an afternoon worth of aimless discomfort." Yeah, a lot of this, philosophers like to think they're doing shit. And it's always, philosophers are arrogant quite often, and they think they know shit, and so you get these sort of I'm solving the problem here. And I mean, when I'm like writing stuff, I'm no different. I'm like, oh, I'm solving this thing. Here's a problem. I'm gonna try and solve it. But I mean, it's philosophy. You have to take into like the long view. Really, you're not gonna solve everything. You have to realize that metaphysics always goes wrong. No one's gonna figure out metaphysics. It's extremely difficult to even make any progress, and like it's a long-term thing that like humans do. And so if you are going to do anything, you have to make certain assumptions. And the problem is, as soon as you start making too many assumptions to get where you want to go, things just get messy and sloppy. Viper says, what if we create masochistic BDSM bots with an unbounded need to please, resulting in supernormal stimulation, dystopia of people bawling, slapping robots' carbon fiber posterior with the bloody stump of their hand used to be. And when you say people, you mean men. That would sound kind of like an addiction where you're basically continue to hurt yourself to get some sort of pleasure that just keeps getting ramped up higher and higher, but you have to hurt yourself more and more to get it. Might be entirely like within the realm of like possibility. The BDSM would have to literally be like better than like anything else. Like it would have to be like a drug. Right, the STEM model of writing an article fits poorly with philosophy. Yeah. This is part of the thing. People have been trying to make philosophy fit into the scientific model, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it just falls flat. See, I don't watch Rick and Morty, so I don't know what that is. And they call it STEAM. What's STEAM? What's the A in STEM? The A added there. Or, I mean, is it just hot air? Is that a joke? Oh, art. Oh, interesting. I didn't know they had added that. That's interesting. Yeah. Philosophy quite often can progress like science, depending on what area you're in. But once you start talking about things like mind in this abstract, it's going to fall flat. Or if you disagree, okay. I mean, I don't know if you want to put art in there, but the idea that they do, I can see why some people would. Again, like this is the problem. The person I think is just bit off too much more than they can chew right here. They're talking about they have a very particular metaphysics that they've just like put on the thing for whatever reason. The brain sends a memo to itself that the damaged tissue must be favored and protected to avoid further damage and facilitate healing over time. That is the meaning of the painful sensation. This implies that there must be an inner function to which this message is meaningful, which manages the affair of the body that cannot be dealt with effectively using existing non-conscious routines. Some authors have used the metaphor of the CEO of a corporation, an inner agent that is also an epistemic subject and the basis of a self. Yes, you'll also notice there's like not that many references here. This is just sort of it's like, it's a paper, but it's not like it's a academically rigorous one. In the case of pain, at least, consciousness is not a superfluous addition to the behavioral response associated with it. Yet, much of conscious experience, such as visual experience, does not seem to involve any necessarily associated behavior. This is largely because the distance senses allow time for considered response in contrast to the immediacy of physical contact. Part of the job of the CEO is to monitor the environment in a manner that allows for planning. Alright, I just find this to be, they're making shit up at this point. But yeah, a lot of the stuff we have to do requires planning that has nothing to do with how the is this person just physically starved for physical contact? Is that their problem? Like, yeah, I'm sitting on a chair right now. I can feel it if I want to think about it. But that doesn't mean I have to do anything about my chair. And so the idea that like the feeling has anything different than my sight, it means that they're just ignoring a lot of their physical sensations. It's like, I can just refute this right here. I'm sitting. I can feel it. Do I have to do anything about that? No. So why is sight so different from feeling? Like, I don't have to physically plan for anything right now. But yeah, like, this is just like a little bit weak. Like this section, the last few sections I've been it's just gotten weaker. Right. Values. The organism is constantly involved in valuation, which is the basis of judgment and decision making. Yes, philosophy roulette, where peer review invariably leads to ad hominem attack. Yeah, well, I'm saying the argument is weaker, not the. I'm not attacking the person here. I say the argument has gotten weaker. The organism is constantly involved in valuation, which is the basis of judgment and decision making. Again, another just bald statement about like a certain relation between, things that people argue about. It has precisely the values it has because natural selection has ensured that only creatures with such values exist. I mean, sure, but again, this is a truism. Like, natural selection has selected for whoever it has, and that's how it is. Yes. And at least this person is attempting to do something. The other person was just very confused. Like, I just consider too immature to really understand what was going on. That I have no problem. You see, and here's your point, Vipers. Was that an ad hominem attack on the other author, calling them immature? I don't think so. I think that is an accurate description of that paper, that the paper was written with an immature sense of history, and therefore the person is like just has an immature sense of history. So you have to be careful. Like, I like to try to get around these arguments. Like, ad hominem is sometimes the right thing to do. That person does not have the requisite experience to talk about what they were talking about. And yeah, thank you, Anne. I mean, I'm happy you agree. But, like, is that a fallacy now? No. I think it's just accurate and it describes the situation correctly. Yeah. And that's right. We did laugh at his profile pics, and I think he also deserved that. But then again, it was a few years ago. Maybe he agrees on that one. But that would require maturity, and so he probably doesn't. And like, watch me, he's like in chat now. He's like, oh, they're making fun of me. Yeah. And see, that's one of the things, Vipers. It's like, you have to, like, when you get into this philosophy stuff, you're like, oh, that's a fallacy of ad hominem. But, like, sometimes it's the right thing to do. It's like, why is it the right thing to do sometimes when people think ad hominem is a fallacy? Well, then you're getting into, like argumentation theory, and that's interesting, too. Okay, the conscious experience of valuation is feeling, again, more metaphysics that they have not justified, which reflects the intentions of the organism. I was wondering if he was in the semiotics. Maybe he is. I mean, I was considering posting the link to Daily News, but I don't think I'm going to do that. The VOD link. In other words, feeling... because I did post, when we read something on aesthetics for birds, I did post that review on their blog. Excuse me. In other words, feeling occurs in and via the body, and it is the very basis of cognition through which the organism represents to itself its own state and its relation to the world in terms of its priorities. Yeah. Yeah. That's fair, semiotics. Like, it's only a fallacy when used in the, if you're trying to discredit an argument unfairly. That's right. Yeah, it's an accurate observation there, Vipers. You see, I feel like we were kind of critical last time. We don't need to beat up on people. I still do kind of feel like I should be nice to people, but I'm not trying to make enemies with philosophy roulette. But yeah, I think it's more entertaining when we criticize people. Yeah, that's right. It is fine to attack a person, and it's only fallacious if it is offered as an argument to support something else. Yeah. But the question is, when is it fine to attack the person? Like, sometimes that is the right thing to do because it shows where the failing is. And so it's interesting when there is a philosophical problem with the person. And like that, I find that interesting that you can do that. Attacking the person as being a bad person for some reason is the cause of like the bad philosophy. And like that's unusual, at least in philosophy. He's really pretty though. Yes. Well, that was what we were making fun of. That like he was taking these pretty shots of himself that were perhaps a little cringe. Bodily sensation is a feeling which is obvious in the example of touch or pain. Yeah. But colors and other qualia are equally feelings in their respective sensory modes. See, again, define feelings differently, and like you can't make this claim. Yeah, not logically problematic, very fair semiotics. While sensations are not always clearly pleasant or unpleasant, judgment is involved in any discrimination. Qualia are the conscious experience of how the human organism represents such discriminations to itself. Again, what definition of qualia are we using? Like, what do you mean by discrimination here? Higher level valuations, such as social and ethical values, are equally a function of the human biological social organism, even when they are promoted as ideals with some universal or platonic existence, like beauty, truth, justice, good, evil, etc. Yeah, yeah, no. Well, we can make fun of people for how they look sometimes. Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Are we allowed to make fun of how people look nowadays? I mean, I think so, yes. But again, it's like, what are you making fun of them for? Are you being overly dramatic? Then yes. Are you like making fun of someone because of like something that's not under their control? Then no, you shouldn't do that. But like if they're being overly dramatic in their like framing, then yeah. AI is generally designed for rational purposes to serve some need or gain some advantage. This concept of rationality is borrowed from economics and game theory to mean essentially self-interest. It is generally assumed that an autonomous AI would behave rationally in the sense of maximizing its utility functions. Yet it is always relevant and essential to clarify whose values are involved. Organisms have their own intentionality and priorities by definition. Unless it constitutes an autopoietic, truly autonomous system, an AI manifests only the intentionality and priorities of its programmers expressing their values. That's a little bit unfair. I mean, you're going to get the values of the programmers, but they're also going to inherit a lot of other stuff from the way, like the history that affects the program and how it was set up and where it is. But yeah, it will express the values of the programmers in some sense. And that's why you're not taking a picture of your Teletubby suit. But that would be wonderful, fantastic content, Vipers. We would laugh about that for days and days and days. Think of how happy you would make the Discord if you posted that. We could laugh and laugh and laugh. Everyone else's like utility would go way up. I know it would be bad for you, but like everyone else would be happy. Just be a utilitarian for a few minutes. Bite the bullet. Alright, but the value for humans of creating a labor-saving or capacity-enhancing tool is different from and at odds with the value of creating an autonomous system tool user. The lesson for AI theorists is know thyself. Wait until winter's. It's a pain to get back in the bag. Yeah, I mean, I guess once you get in your Teletubby suit, you're not going to get out. Okay, there, Ned Stark. Talk of the perceptions, beliefs, goals, or knowledge held by an AI is a convenient way of speaking. It is shorthand that lends to the program the meaning in the mind of the programmer. Concepts such as search space, belief state, and knowledge base, similarly formulated by human beings, are similarly project human notions. Excuse me, skipped a line. A knowledge base, for example, consists of sentences, facts formulated by human beings. They are not things in the real world, and their meanings are not articulated by the computer. So far, the intentionality involved is that of the human programmer, not the program. While convenient, laxness in language confuses the threshold issue, since it is conceivable that a program will one day actually manifest its own intentionality, which could be quite different from that of the programmer. Can friendliness be programmed and unfriendliness contained? Yeah. Could friendliness be programmed and unfriendliness contained? The short answer is no, but let us see why. Values are embodied aspects of the organism's autonomy. The idea of programming values of the human organism into an AI is either trivial or contradictory, depending on whether the AI is a tool or itself an autonomous agent. If it is a tool, it implicitly reflects the values and needs of the programmer. If it is a truly autonomous system, it will have its own values and needs. While no such truly autonomous AI yet exists, if it did, programmers would only be able to transfer their values to it in the limited ways that adults transfer their values to children, or governments to their citizenry, or masters impose their values on animals or slaves. So, yeah, but like, this is the thing. I'm completely okay with this stuff. Like, in one hand, if you have complete control and it's not autonomous, then yeah, garbage in, garbage out. You program it to do one thing, it does that thing. But if it's making its own decisions, you can only suggest things to it and try and teach it things. Yeah, that's right. And enculturation, like if it's like a human, if it's intelligent like a kid, then it's just like having another kid. That's what I was saying it earlier too. If we can make it a truly autonomous AI, then it's just like having, like, it depends on what kind of thing it is. If it's like a kid, then you're just teaching another kid. There's nothing all that special about that, really. It's like, okay. Now, Vipers also said, well, computers can learn at a faster rate than humans. It's like, I don't know. Maybe once you make it into a kid, it does not learn at a faster rate. Maybe it does, but we'd have to see what that is at that point. Yeah, an AI director. Yeah, so, I mean, if we've got the AIs now that are putting together just images, and, like, you can use that easily online by yourself, we're going to get, like, AI movies probably in the next few years. The very concept of artificial general intelligence is self-contradictory. On the one hand, its vaunted advantages lie in capabilities that exceed the level and breadth of human capabilities, do not require direct human supervision, and would even lie beyond human comprehension. The motive, presumably for general intelligence, to remain under human control as a tool to serve human goals and values and to act for human benefit. I mean, is this even a question? We have so much media about the artificial intelligence getting out of control. I mean, yeah. Yet it is questionable whether a tool can have the desired capabilities without being fully autonomous and thus beyond human control. The idea is to create a loyal servant that would remain friendly despite having its own values and priorities that may conflict with the programmers. Perhaps it is imagined that there is the margin within which one can have the proverbial cake and eat it too, a superior tool that is relatively but not quite fully autonomous, which can be programmed or trained to be friendly and serve human interests, a tame genie that goes voluntarily back into its bottle. If there is such a margin, it is likely narrow and implies instability. It needs to be carefully explored in thought before in practice, but the basic unavoidable trade-off is between autonomy and control. Yeah. Movies might be a painfully accurate caricature of our darker and quirkier characteristics. Yeah, HAL 9000. Yeah, I mean, I always go back to Terminator. Like the computers get out of control very quickly as soon as that happens. It's not that. It's like this is all like rehashing the last like 60, 70 years of sci-fi right here. See, and then we got another, like, this is just like rehashing sci-fi right here. The notion of containment usually implies isolation from the real world. This is again like half the AI breaks out of its secure system. Unfortunately, complete denial of physical access to or from the real world would mean that the contained AI would be inaccessible and useless. There would have to be some interface with human users or interlocutors in order to use its abilities. Viper says the idea of singularity is that it can iterate upon itself faster than biological evolution. Not only could it replicate intelligence of its level instantly and improve its code, it can develop the chips that code runs on. Yeah, I mean, that's the idea, is like it's gonna go just so fast compared to us. But again, that would have to have a very, like, I'm not sure exactly, like, it'd just be, that's the fantasy that it can do that. I don't know if that's like even like conceptually like I don't know what kind of thing we would have to do to be that smart about that. But yeah, like we just aren't there yet, so it's like I don't know what it would take. But yeah, but like this is just rehashing sci-fi for a while back now. Yeah, maybe it'll just make a solitaire bot. Maybe that is the end all be all of humanity. It's not the number 42, it's to play solitaire really well. Yeah, so tool user, or between. By traditional definition, a machine is specified by human design and intentionality. It serves as a tool, which is an implementation to accomplish an agent's purpose, and that purpose again would be for it to make itself faster if it's running on its own, if it's a singularity. Computers that are programmed top-down, such as in GoFi, I guess is the general AI, conform to this definition of machine and serve specific purposes as tools. Some systems, such as neural nets, complicate and evade this definition because their operation can no longer be tracked. The system is no longer clearly specifiable. The physical system hardware may seem to be a machine in the traditional sense, yet its state cannot be identified as a product of human definition or intent, but appears to be a result of self-organization. Alright, so now we're finally getting somewhere where we can't, is not just as people have written it out. We have used a system that kind of is a black box. From the point of view of the programmer or an external observer, it becomes a black box on a similar footing as organisms have always been. While the mechanistic view of organisms insists that the content of the black box can be known as though it has been designed, the practical truth is that we have only theories or models of what goes on inside. Unlike the designed artifact, we can only speculate on its structure, functioning, and principles. This is a fundamentally different relationship from the one we have to designed artifacts, which in principle do what we want and are exactly what we say they are. I mean, are they? Can you tell me all the, like, here's like a water bottle. I mean, it's a purchased one. Like, this is just a reusable water bottle that you can just go get in a store because it was full with water. Like, it's just like a retail thing I got for $2. Can you tell me all the things that went into this? Like, like any of you? Like, this is a metal. It's got like some sort of printing on it. We have no idea. Most things we have no idea about the chemical structure, like how this was made, anything about it. So, moreover, I have like I'm drinking supplemented water, and like, so it's got electrolytes in it. Do I have any idea, like, what all that exactly comes down to? Hell no. Does someone know more about it than me? Yes. Do they know everything? Hell no, because then they'd have to know all the physics and all the chemistry that was behind all of that too, all the way down to the quantum physics, and no one knows all of that. So the idea that we know all this stuff is wrong. Now, do we know less about certain stuff? Yes. And that is, like, the author's partially right here, but it's like, again, this is way too, so just a little bit is sloppy, and this sloppy argumentation. Ironically, while the neural net is initially designed like the organism, it becomes unknown. This situation establishes an ambiguous zone between fully controllable tool and a fully autonomous agent, with the potential to be a tool user itself, pursuing its own goals. In other words, an entity controllable by people only in the way the natural organisms are. With neural nets, we have already entered this zone and should proceed with caution, since it signals a loss of the control traditionally assumed for machines. Lumpy says, even for chemists, knowing the actual industrial process for a given reaction is rare knowledge. Yeah, and you get paid a lot of money if you can scale up chemical reactions. I have a cousin somewhere who that was his job. You know, like a second or third cousin, I forget. If there is a key factor leading technology irreversibly beyond human control, or the singularity, as Viper's already pointed out, that's what it's called when this starts to happen. It is surely the capacity to self-program based on learning, combined with the capacity to self-modify physically. So there we go. As Viper says, they're going to both program themselves and make new chips, and that would be the self-modify. While either capacity greatly enhances the power of a machine as a tool, it also renders it essentially uncontrollable. Viper says the idea of an intelligence who could know and comprehend the totality of human knowledge is kind of terrifying. Yeah, but again, like, it might also be impossible, so it's like, I'm not so worried about that. Like, it's extremely difficult, even with something that can learn faster than us. There's a huge amount of data that, like, it's just not, I find it very dubious, to tell you the truth. Like, our knowledge is so flaky, like, so flaky. You're about to escape to your own reality. See you around, good folks. Have a good stream and have fun. Thanks for coming by, and I appreciate it. Have a wonderful whatever you're doing. Like, we can get. Let's see if we get another shout out. Try again. Oh, you know what they did? Let's try this. Unrecognized command. What are you talking about? All right, interesting. I got a for all you streamers out there. Twitch says they're adding a new chat command /shoutout to do automated shoutouts, and it like I have a message on my panel here, and so automated shoutouts are now going to be built in. Typing /shoutout, but it didn't work. It said unrecognized command when I did that. So, yeah. So yeah, we've got this thing. Okay, the characteristic of life that so far renders it unmachine-like is its ability to reproduce and to self-modify, adapt, even on a microscopic scale. No doubt, recreating these abilities artificially is a very tempting goal, but one to avoid at all costs. Okay, this person's afraid of the future. They're kind of wussing out right here. They're just saying it's bad. While some AI proponents do not aim only for useful tools, but also to create tool users in their own image, one should be very clear about the difference and beware of the latter. For there is no guarantee that an AI capable of reprogramming itself can be overridden by a human programmer. Similarly, there is no guarantee that programmable nanites would remain under control if they can self-modify and reproduce. If we wish to retain control over technology, it should consist only of tools in the traditional sense, systems that do not modify or reproduce themselves. Theorists should ask themselves whether the notion of an autonomous tool, however alluring, is anything but an oxymoron and naively fatuous wishful thought. Okay, this person went full get off my lawn, we shouldn't ever do anything we don't quite understand, discovery is scary and dangerous and bad. And they also just went full like nanites on us, like sci-fi stuff. So right here, it's like, you've just like lost me in some sense, because what you're doing here is you're just ranting about like sci-fi things. Yeah. Okie doke. Threshold of singularity. Increasing, I should actually say more. There are plenty of discussions about this stuff. We've had discussions about this stuff on this channel, and also a lot with our friend Aris. Aris teaches internet ethics. Like, he talks about this sort of thing, like what can we actually do, what should we do with our technology. And so it's like the fact that this author is just saying look out, it's dangerous, like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock, again. But a whole bunch of people said smart things. Maybe you should either like reference them or at least do something. But like, this is just again, it's a I don't have any problem with it other than that I'm not sure why I'm reading that paragraph right there. Like, I agree, but like, it's like, why are you stating stuff that we all know already? Threshold of singularity. Increasing autonomy for technology is sought because of the contemplated advantages of an ideal tool, one that can manage and improve itself, perhaps even reproduce itself, with relatively little human input. There may be a definable threshold between tools that extend human power but remain within human control, and fully autonomous entities that cease to be tools and elude human control. If so, it should be a priority to clearly define that threshold and never cross it. The ambiguous zone already occupied by neural nets represents an immediate possibility with a specific danger. Artifacts that develop themselves independently of human intent and out of control, yet are not autopoietic systems. If such artifacts are physical and have the ability to self-replicate, like von Neumann machines, as well as self-modify, they might potentially establish their own artificial environment, competing for resources with the natural ones, and even displacing it. Okay, now we've got the Matrix with the machines, fighting humans and stuff. Some posthumanists laud the prospect of artificial life, since organic life on this planet is doomed to eventual extinction by the demise of the sun, if nothing sooner. artificial, non-organic, non-silicon and steel or silicon and steel entities could possibly survive in a broader range of environments and indefinitely into the future. Their thinking could operate at the speed of electricity rather than ion flows in wet wear. There is no guarantee, however, that this artificial nature would evolve consciousness or even sentience. Sentience and consciousness are strategies of natural replicators for homeostasis, in other words, based on the very fragility of organic life. Okay, I think this is just missing something in scale. Over a long enough time, everything breaks down. And so maybe like there are organisms that have very, very long lives or evolve over much longer times than happened on Earth, but because they're using much more robust things. So this is the Boltzmann brain, actually. Could the universe itself be conscious? And it's using the planets as, the physical, what we have in terms of molecules. Well, the universe is using galaxies and stuff for the same thing. And so galaxies come into existence and get destroyed. Stars go supernova. So all sorts of things. So I feel like this person is missing a sense of scale here. Yeah, the fragility of organic life compared to something else, but that other thing might just be just as fragile on a much longer time scale. Okay, if the advantage of artificial replicators is to bypass that fragility from the outset, then their very robustness might also avoid or alter the premise of evolution through natural selection that gave rise to natural sentience in the first place. This is a theoretical question that needs further exploration. Yeah, dude, but people have talked about this. Like, seriously, I'm pretty sure, like, plenty of people have, talked about that stuff. The scenario of a non-sentient takeover concerns nanotechnology as much as AI. From the point of view of human beings, even posthumanists, the horrifying possibility would be a universe overrun by mechanical self-replicators, devoid of sentience, an artificial ecology that fails to evolve the consciousness we so cherish. Imagine something like Vonnegut's Ice 9, which could escape the planet and replicate itself indefinitely with the materials of other worlds. For that matter, imagine viruses with that capability. Yet this isn't that hard, and I'm sure this is done plenty of times in sci-fi. If life happened simply because it could happen, then possibly with the aid of human beings or parallel agents on other planets, an insentient but robust and invasive artificial nature could also happen. Perhaps we are not in a position to judge such an eventuality, as we are not in a position to judge, only to wonder at the existence of life on this planet. However, it would not seem to correspond to any human value, motivation, or hope, even those of posthumanists. I mean, yeah, this is like the idea we're going to get some virus from another planet that just self-replicates. Like, that's not that strange as far as sci-fi goes. I mean, isn't there like a Michael Crichton book on that? The Andromeda strain? Yeah. An alternate scenario is already under development. The possibility of computation by means of cultured living cells, literally neural networks. The immediate purpose may be to create new tools, but some people imagine the possibility that such devices could self-organize into beings with superior intelligence. This raises even more questions than silicon-based AI. Again, this is the Boltzmann brain, but on a very small scale. It's that there is some other organization that could create a brain. I mean, that's not crazy. That's just fine. It's like a panpsychism too. While it might seem more feasible in some ways to approach superintelligence through biology by emulating the brain, for example, than conventional programming, it would not have the advantages of electronic speed or non-biologic durability. Beyond creating specific tools, what then would be the point? Motivation. Theorists and programmers have a moral duty to clarify their own values and motivations and be upfront about them, and also to clarify the choices and dangers AI poses to the human community and the planet. In addition to confusing about what is possible, there is little consensus about what is desirable. Some transhumanists believe that AI is the next stage of human evolution and that superior artificial minds or organisms will and should supersede human form and would manifest superior consciousness. Some believe technology will extend their personal lives indefinitely. Again, this is one of these things, like, are they making sex robots? Do they just want to live forever? Like, what petty things do people want? in either an embodied or disembodied state. Some critics fear that forms of advanced machine intelligence devoid of sentience could take over the planet and even the universe, driving consciousness to extinction. I mean, yeah, if we make some sort of like virus that just knocks everything out, that's gonna happen. Some sci-fi authors envision that AI and natural intelligence can productively coexist, bringing untold general wealth and leisure. For others, AI serves as a new sort of companion. Compare domestic robots, as in the film Bicentennial Man, sexbots, as in the film Ex Machina, or operating systems, as in the film Her, and Transcendence. If the sky is the limit, humans might even finally give tangible birth to the gods they have always worshipped and longed to emulate, a society run by AI overlords that might or might not be benevolent. All these possibilities indicate a spectrum of beliefs, values, and motivations. Yeah, it's just the Matrix again. But why do any of this? For profit, out of laziness, to live in a world where all production, even intellectual, is automated, simply because someone else inevitably will? Is a hidden goal to mimic female powers by creating a male version of life? Is it to steal the envied fire of the gods? Is it to deliberately recreate that part of nature that is ourselves in our haste to pave over paradise and thumb our nose at mankind's historical dependency on the natural world? Are we so lonely on this glutted planet that we must create new breeds of consciousness to work with which to interact? Are we trying to recreate a benign god to watch over us, or is the motivation more conventional but sinister, to convert the means of production and human labor into totally into capital robots owned by the tiny elite that already hoard the more than half of the world's wealth? Or, despairing of that very trend and the sad lot of much of humanity already, is it on the contrary to push a reset button and to start afresh with new forms of life that might behave more sensibly? Alright, this is like, jeez, man. Like, did he just have to go through, like, every fucking, like, rehash of, like, all the ideas right there? Like, was that necessary? Like, all these things. Science has done its best to disown and mask the subjective intentions behind this quest, not only to study nature, but also to control it and achieve godlike powers. I mean, according to who? Like, you, dude? Like, writer? Like, what is our grand purpose here? Are we just, replicating godlike powers? Is that all of society? Thank you for telling me. I didn't realize we're all just trying to be God. Good to know. The irony of AI is that it redefines intelligence as devoid of the emotions and values that actually motivate it. Dangerously, the right brain knows little of what the left brain is doing. Like, seriously, we're just like throwing out, catchphrases now. Like, there's a whole section of catchphrases. The philosophical and moral gauntlet that AI throws down. So yeah, more catchphrases. We're going to throw down a gauntlet. Involves age-old questions and some very contemporary ones. One cannot afford to approach these questions with less than full awareness of one's own motivations. Viper says, Lumpy says, we so cherish. I read a spooky news article and I'm scared. I hope you're okay, Lumpy. Viper says, if we create AI, I don't think it'll attack us. It would be like a plant attacking the soil it grew from. Have you ever heard of Rocco's basilisk? I think you've mentioned Rocco's basilisk before. I don't remember it, though, off the top of my head. But yeah, I don't know. If you create an AI, I don't think it'll attack us. Why not? Like, just because, there's, things that, they grow out of, whatever they grow out of, but they're taking all the nutrients out of it. Like, if it thought of us as, the dirt, it takes the nutrients out of the dirt. So I'm not sure, that's a great analogy, because, it's sucking the, nutrients out of the dirt, and the dirt is left with less nutrients afterwards. And so it's well, if it just sees us as dirt, and, with the resources it could use, then maybe it will. Who's to say? Lumpy was implying that the author is scared. Oh, that's what it is. The we so cherish reeks of someone clutching their suburban life close to their heart. Yeah, this is a get off my lawn, clutching at pearl sort of thing. LC 2500, welcome in. Hope you're doing well. Asks, isn't Rocco's basilisk that thing that Grimes and Elon Musk were obsessed with? That's the only way you know it? Okay, I don't remember what Rocco's basilisk is. Have to look that up. But I want to get through this. We're getting close to the end. Who is we? Yeah. And the clutching at pearl crowd, I guess. That's who we are. It is easy and convenient to speak for humanity as whole. Yes, it is. That doesn't mean you should. But there simply is no united we to consider how to handle the prospects of AI on behalf of the species, let alone the planet. Instead, there are various groups with diverse and conflicting interests. I mean, we're just getting into like truisms and like, again, catchphrases here. There is already a transnational economic elite that controls most of the world's assets, abetted by the people who work for them. Will not new technology simply further their aims and entrench their power, as it has always done in the past? Yeah, I could look it up on the wikis. Technological advance has benefited humanity very unevenly, a trend that can only accelerate under present social values. There is also an elite of mostly male programmers and theorists who are directly in a position to play God, and some of whom who intend to do so. There are sober and hysterical sounding experts on both sides. There are enthusiasts and detractors on the sidelines, as well as the overwhelming majority of people and creatures on the planet who don't know or care. But there is no way. Yeah, this person is, again, throwing out a lot of words and sayings, and I don't quite know if they have a point. Okay, Roko's Basilisk. Roko's Basilisk is a thought experiment of the potential risk involving developing artificial intelligence. Its conclusion is that an all-powerful artificial intelligence from the future might retroactively punish those who did not help bring about its existence, including those who merely knew about the possible development of such a being. It is named after Rocco Amiek, a member of the rationalist community, less wrong, who first publicly described it, though he did not originate the underlying ideas. Yeah, that's fair. It's a great quote from William Gibson. The future is already here. It's just not very evenly distributed. I mean, these fucking cell phones, like, they're just fantastic. They do amazing things. And of course, some people can't use them. Like, and you don't have to go very far to find people who can barely use the technology. So, yeah, so it's a kind of a futurist version of Pascal's wager. It suggests people should weigh punishment versus reward as a result of a particular singularian idea or financially support the right development. Okay, yeah, so it's like the idea is that, like, if there is a singularity, it's going to maybe take it out on the people that didn't help it. So, yeah, so what should you do? You should work towards helping the singularity, because it may punish you if you don't. But if you help it, it may give you rewards beyond measure. Yeah, the basilisk is an info hazard. Some people can't handle the thought. Interesting. Yeah. Let's go look at that. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. We could talk about the basilisk later, but like I said, I want to get to the end of this. We only got 3 more pages. Oh, okay. Now we're getting into like personhood and identity. Who indeed is I? Beyond the prospect of extending the life of the body, one transhumanist hope is to preserve the consciousness of the individual indefinitely. Yet one may ask, why do we fear an end to our conscious experience? And what is the conscious self that it should be valued apart from the body? In religious days, it was the soul, a quasi-material ectoplasm with moral and legal responsibilities. In psychology, it is the... Oh, you're right. Sorry about that. Thank you. I always, like... Yeah. Surprisingly easy to fuck up streaming. In psychology, it is the ego which mediates between the external social world and the organism. In philosophy and ordinary language, it is the subject of experience as distinguished from objects of experience, at once a mere point of view and the seat of consciousness. In the present context, it is a function within the brain, a high-level internal manager with an autopoietic system. While the soul was deemed immortal, any brain function expires with its brain. Death puts an end to bodily experience. If there is no afterlife or possibility of disembodied experience, it deprives us also of consciousness forever. But what is the value to the person of that consciousness, such that one would wish at all cost for it to continue indefinitely? Transhumanism proposes escape from mortality as a technological option, indeed a consumer option. If the brain can be emulated as a computer program, then so could the personality, memories, identity, and the very consciousness of the person. While the physical brain must die, the digital essence of the person might live on in cyberspace or be downloaded into a new organic or artificial body. This fantasy returns us to an essentially religious, perhaps superstitious conception of an immaterial essence of the person, separable from the body. Ironically, is supposedly endorsed by physicalism. It harks back to Descartes' original conundrum that the contents of consciousness could be falsified. I mean, I'm not sure what they mean it's supposedly endorsed by physicalism. I mean, no, actually I do. What they're saying here is that if the consciousness is really just this organization of physical things in the mind, and that you could replace it by different parts, then you could just transfer your mind to a computer that has similarly working parts. But then the funny part is they go to Descartes, who was famously a dualist and not a physicalist. There were two things, the physical world and mind. So so I'm not going to read their analysis of Descartes because there's a little footnote here, but I don't think it's worth it. Okay, immortality is an age-old human aspiration, one pursued as religious belief and now updated as technologically feasible, whether through enhancements and replacements of the physical organism through digital simulation or some combination. Yet putting aside feasibility, why would one wish to live indefinitely? Of course, nature has programmed the body to try to survive, and the self is the avatar of the body within the natural virtual reality we call consciousness. In the system of nature, however, death is the price of life, which evolved through the mortality of succeeding generations. Individual cells submit to this plan, forfeiting their individuality to the organization of an ongoing larger entity. But even cells are programmed to die after so many divisions. Individual human beings play a role like cells in the destiny of the species. We play our brief part, then withdraw to make place for another generation to play theirs. The cell that refuses to die is malignant. One could believe, and others might concur, that the contents of one's own mind deserve to be archived indefinitely for the use of future generations. What the fuck would the future generations want with my stupid ideas? But that is quite different than carrying on indefinitely as a productive thinker, and such productivity is a different matter than merely continuing as a consumer of experience. We can imagine, furthermore, that an Einstein expert programmer might usefully simulate Einstein's style of thought without resurrecting his subjective consciousness, let alone his body. It would be a tool, not a person. It would take up negligible space on the planet. While the same could be said for simulations of lesser intellects with lesser usefulness to future generations, it is an unreasonable hope that such simulations would be conscious persons. They've had this in Star Trek, where they have doctors you can call up. I remember it was like Deep Space Nine or something, or Voyager or something, where they had an episode where they could pull up another doctor AI, like a very good scientist. But basically, it was the old "do you save the Nazi scientist?" Argument, because that doctor was known to do terrible things, didn't really care about ethics, but was a brilliant scientist and doctor, like saved a lot of people, but at the cost of torturing people. So there's nothing, it's what's the use of doing it? And in the end, they had to decide whether they wanted to keep that simulation there, even though they had all the resources to maintain it indefinitely. It wasn't screwing with their system that it was there. But I think I won't spoil what they decide to do. In any case, one's attachment to personal ongoing conscious existence does not seem to hinge rationally on merit. Well, why not? Seems like a lot of people want to live more. It merely reflects the programming of the organism to survive. What the fuck does that mean? Why the programming of the organism, but is that separate from our rationality? And what the fuck, how's this making any sense? Okay. It merely reflects the programming of the organism to survive, combined with the archaic superstition that mind is separable from the body. Again, this person is already deciding all the metaphysics and already that we are programmed in this way. That's weird. A conscious self or ego is no more or less than a function of the brain, which serves the need of a body that is not well designed to survive beyond reproductive age. This sad truth reflects nature's inefficiency from a human point of view. We should have a stream what the fuck calendar. Yeah, maybe. I've been trying to think about how to what's one thing I was actually thinking about, speaking of Twitch, is that I should get some new emotes, and then I was thinking I'd have a what the fuck emote, and so we could have the what the fuck emotes in chat when the author was saying stupid things. But yeah, so that would kind of function in that way. We could have a physical counter where Amya's what the fuck, what the fuck, what the fuck, what the fuck, or you could spam the emote in chat, and then we could have the emote counts and whatnot. After finally accumulating a lot of useful information, and just as we are beginning to get some wisdom, we die and it all goes to waste. You see, this person is just sad and bitter. But does this body, with its mind, warrant prolonged existence merely because it clings to it? A whole generation of individuals may succeed in extending life simply because they were able to do so, technologically and financially. What use will they make of their extra time? Well, drugs. And hookers and blow. Quo vadis? A number of authors cite the term cosmic endowment to describe and endorse the indefinite colonization of other planets, stars, and galaxies, even imagining the conversion of all matter in the universe into intelligence or consciousness, just as the conquistadors sought to convert the New World to Catholicism while pillaging its resources. This is a political agenda at heart, an extinction of manifest destiny or Lebensraum. Endowment is a legal concept of property rights and ownership. How culture-centric can we get? Clearly we can get extremely culture-centric. Just being rhetorical again, throwing around concepts. Thank you, author. One sec. On the other hand, Fermi's paradox could apply. If the universe is teeming with intelligence, perhaps even with advanced civilizations far older than ours, which pass the threshold of singularity and promulgate machine intelligence that multiplies throughout the universe, then where are these invaders? Perhaps the fact that Earth does not seem to have been invaded by non-organic replicators is evidence against such possibilities. Or are we the evidence for them? Are we simulations they keep as pets for entertainment? On the other hand, perhaps civilization based on organic intelligence is everywhere doomed to exterminate itself before reaching singularity. Okay, just throw around all the ideas you want about sci-fi at this point. Such wild speculations aside, why? You've been doing it for fucking pages at this point. Now you're gonna stop, author? Such wild speculations aside, the world seems to be rapidly heading toward a utopia-dystopia in which a few people and or machines hold all the means of production and no longer need the masses either as workers or as consumers, nor as companions, and certainly not as voters. The entire planet could be their private gated community with little place for the rest of us. Even if it proves feasible for humans to retain control of technology, it might only serve the aims of very few. How consoling is it to have human overlords rather than machines? Yes, this is back to the pearl clutching of someone who's afraid of the future. Maybe rightly so, but that's all that's happening here. A true alternative to a world dominated by AI might depend on disillusion with the dubious premise on which the goals of AI are founded, many of which seem also to be the premises on which our civilization is founded. Really? Where's our civilization founded? Are you picking some random Greek thing? They already discounted that there is no we and no I, but now they're going to say on the principles on our civilization. Are we talking the Christian church? Or are we talking ancient Greece? Are we talking something else? I don't know. Okay, these include control. There's an alternative to Fermi's paradox. Which one do you like? Okay, these can include control, power over nature and others, transcendence of embodiment, freedom from death and disease, laziness or greed, machines perform all tasks and effortlessly provide abundance, creating artificial life, womb envy, creating super beings, god envy, creating artificial companions, unsatisfying social intercourse, ubiquitous belief in the mechanist metaphor and proselytizing intelligence or information. The universe is metaphorically a computer and should become one literally. Even if we could ever get past such premises, the value and mentality behind them have already led to current dangerous social and ecological realities. Isn't it fatuous to imagine that AI, following the same mentality, will do anything but produce more of the same? Progress may seem as irreversible as entropy because we moderns do not care to imagine going backwards. Yet the definition of forward has not been written in stone. The fuck are you talking about, author? Hey, we're going to talk about, hey, we have to move forward, not backwards. Everyone, move forward, not backwards. It has not been written in stone, nor even by a majority. In relation to machines, at least, we have not yet completely forfeited control. We can still imagine pursuing more innocuous goals than those behind superintelligence. Or to put it another way, we can embrace a less goal-oriented life. Artists have done it in every age. Modern art can nearly be defined as making useless artifacts and events. Why are they useless? I mean, modern art can be nearly defined as making useless artifacts and events. No one defines it that way, ever. Things done for the hell or the beauty of it more than for some utility. The idea of being Fermi's paradox is founded in 20th century quantitative ideas of civilization signatures, whereas a 21st century qualitative explains the apparent paradox. Copy pasting the paper. We propose a new classification scheme containing the following three categories. Class 0, the environment is used as is animals. Class 1, we modify the environment, closed buildings. Class 2, we modify ourselves to fit the environment, so genetic improvement. Class 3, we merge with the environment, converting the dead matter into the universe into thinking matter. But basically, we've been looking at ECTs the whole time. We just mistook them for nature. Yeah, I'm actually with that one. I never heard that, but I always thought, like, we always look for the technology that we know at the time, which of course is, why would any future more powerful civilization use like our communication techniques that we're looking for? And so the idea that like it's merged into the environment in some way we don't understand, that seems right. Like, if like that's why we don't see things that are, why would anything more advanced than us use the same things that we use to communicate? Like, it just seems silly to me. And so of course we don't find anything because okay, I mean, not this minute, but it might be fun to take a look at. Grab the link. Okay, 7 pages. Yeah, like science stuffy. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, when do I have time? Remind me that one? Alright. But we're back to just finishing up this thing because we can. Such invention is the timeless basis of culture. Technological creation builds on itself exponentially with catastrophic environmental consequences. Artists also use up resources, of course, but their products do not generally use up resources in turn, and art can be shared. Everyone expects to have a cell phone, if not a car or computer, all of which depend on a vast industrial infrastructure. While not everyone can own a Rembrandt, nearly everyone with limited means can visit a museum, own a reproduction, or can themselves draw or paint, sing or dance, or write or tell a story if they choose to. Entertaining ourselves and each other with limited means is a value of recent history to which we could choose to return. This person is just like afraid of the future at this point. Conclusion, thankfully. Concepts of general intelligence are narrowly based on human consciousness and performance, yet it remains unclear to what extent an AI could satisfy the criteria for general intelligence without itself being conscious, or at least being an embodied autonomous entity, effectively an organism. The concept of AI as autonomous must be starkly contrasted with the concept of AI as a tool. An AI is autonomous just in the measure that it is not pre-programmed, and it is uncontrollable in the measure it is autonomous. If it is effectively an organism, it might well be sentient, but could only be controlled in the ways that human beings have found to control natural organisms, that is, against their own priorities and self-determination, compromising their autonomy. Perhaps there is a margin between maximal capability as a tool and genuine autonomy. If the desired properties of AI depend on full autonomy, then that AI would be fundamentally beyond human control. All the more ominous if the desired capabilities exceed human level comprehension. Next time you'll skim the paper rather than look for one under 50 pages. Yeah, do whatever. It's cool. That's why it's roulette. I can figure it out as we go along. It's very hard to tell from the outside or from a skim if something is good or not. Sometimes things look worse than they are. Sometimes things look better than they are. Usually things look better than they are, but it's hard to tell. The threshold between tool and tool user lies somewhere in that margin and must not be crossed. However, a self-modifying program might cross it without or even knowing it or being able to prevent it. I mean, that's the most likely scenario, that like once we hit this thing, it's going to happen without our control. And so the idea that we can actually prevent that is unreasonable almost. If the AI is to be truly autonomous, then it must be embodied, which means having its own values and priorities, such as survival, derived through an evolutionary contest. Well, you could, or at least simulated evolutionary contest. This contradicts the idea of pre-programming friendliness to any degree beyond the ability of breeders to domesticate animals, even through genetic engineering. Humans pride themselves on their limited ability to consciously override conditioning. How much more easily could a superintelligent agent override the conditioning of its human progenitors? A distinct danger lies within the margin between tool and tool user. Self-improving, self-replicating technology could take over the world and beyond without ever producing what we value as sentience or consciousness, a machine death of the universe. Socrates' injunction, know thyself, is all the more important for AI theorists and technicians, since the technology opens up the possibilities that have never existed before, which potentially could spell the end of the human race and even of all organic life. Why one must risk such a catastrophe depends on motivations that should at least be known and acknowledged for what they are and be clearly visible on the table for discussion. Okay. And we're done, thankfully. Yeah. So should machines be tools or tool users? Clarifying motivations and assumptions in the quest for superintelligence. I don't think I found anything clear in this paper or clarified. I thought actually it was plenty clear what they were doing. I thought the whole thing was clear. The problem was it was too clear. They didn't have enough good ideas on their own. Now, the idea that like, oh, we can't let it get too smart, fine. Like, all right, sure. That there's some limit, okay, maybe they did some work over there. But then once they got past that bit, I don't think they had anything else to say, and then it all became just, look out, it's scary and dangerous in the future, and things could go wrong. And so basically, nothing got said for the second half of this entire, more than half the second half of this entire paper. And it was just sort of a drag, because there was a lot of catchphrases and no real content. And I'm not even sure there was a whole lot of content to begin with in the beginning parts. Yeah, so it'll be wicked smart because it's from Boston. Yeah. Have you dealt with anybody from Boston? I mean, and the people at MIT don't speak like Boston people. Or maybe some do, I don't know. Yeah, Boston people. Maybe they'll have good clam chowder. That'll be cool. Like we make an artificial intelligence and it'll make like a really fucking killer Boston clam chowder. That would be awesome. And we'll be like, this is the first AI meal that has surpassed every clam chowder that has ever existed before. That would be good.